Okay, so, folks, there's a story recently about a group of New York Police Department officers who were minding their own business in Times Square before they were cruelly targeted and beaten bloody by evil, nefarious migrants. Okay? So let's watch the news coverage of it. Let's watch a little bit of the news and see what this was all about.
You are watching surveillance footage showing 5 asylum seekers who viciously attacked police officers in New York's Times Square as the cops were attempting to detain another man. Now, the assault happened last Saturday when police attempted to disperse a disorderly group of people. ABC News reports that when officers attempted to place an individual in custody, the suspects began to kick and punch the officers, and then they fled the scene. And you can see all of that taking place in the surveillance footage that we just showed you. Now, luckily, no one was seriously injured, and the police were treated on the scene for minor injuries, including one person who had, some cuts to his face. The suspects, luckily, were later arrested. The suspects were identified Wednesday as Yorman Reveron, 24 years old, Darwin Andres Gomez Isquiel, 19 years old, Wilson Jarez, 21, Kelvin Arocha, 19, and then Joan Boada, 22 years old. So they face some charges, including assault on a police officer, disorderly conduct, and gang assault. Now, it is being widely reported now by local news outlets in New York that the individuals who carried out these assaults are actually asylum seekers. The assault took place in front of a migrant shelter, and there have been increasing scuffles with migrants between one another for the most part, but this is the first time that we're seeing surveillance footage of them literally attacking cops and being kind of brazen and emboldened enough to do something like that. One of them already had a criminal record. Reveron has 2 pending cases in Manhattan for assault and robbery. He allegedly attacked a law.
Man, Valiant Thor, you don't have to share your weird, like, xenophobic shower thoughts in YouTube chat. You know you can keep those to yourself, right?
Loss prevention officer at a Macy's department store during an alleged robbery, and also allegedly punched and bit a Nordstrom Rack employee in November. I don't want to get ahead of myself here.
Okay, wait. I'm sorry. So, like, as you can see, this unruly mob of people attacked these poor NYPD officers. And also there was some shoplifting with, like, minor scuffles in these other instances. So clearly this is evidence of a wide-scale problem. What? Come on.
Because I have a whole argument that I'm about to make. But let me just say this. Considering the lack of resources for migrants, considering the fact that you have a situation in which there isn't enough shelter and you have migrants sleeping outside, can we deport the migrants who are engaging in this kind of behavior and this kind of crime? Like,
yeah, actually. If you're an asylum seeker, yeah, that's what happens. If you're an asylum seeker and you commit a crime in the United States, you get deported. That's what happens. That's how it works already.
Like, one of them has already gotten arrested twice for assaulting employees at retail stores.
Also, again, shouldn't have to point this out, being arrested is not the same as being convicted, right? So, because we have a legal system in this country, just because someone's arrested for a crime isn't the conviction yet. They need to be convicted of the crime before they're deported. That's like the order of operations here.
And then you have the surveillance footage of them kicking cops in the head as the cops are trying to detain another guy. Why What are we doing? So they get arrested and then they're let out. No bail. Because it's New York City, of course.
If they were really dangerous, they would have been held without bail. Like the system, like cashless bail doesn't get rid of the state's ability to hold them in jail. The state just holds them in jail if they're deemed to be like a threat to themselves or society. And clearly in this case, they did not believe that to be the case. Like, cashless bail just means that they don't get to hold you in jail just because you're poor. They have to have an actual reason other than, well, you're poor, to hold you. And if that reason is good enough, then they should be held, obviously. But this isn't like a case where like, oh, well, New York got rid of cashless bail, so, you know, they have to let these murderers back on the streets. Like, no, that's not how that works. And Anna knows that's not how this works. Anna has talked about these cashless bail programs. Anna has talked about these different, like, left-wing progressive ideas.
Okay, listen, I know we have a giant left-wing audience, and I love you guys. Please don't give in to some knee-jerk reaction to provide cover for these people.
You know, I find it very rich because, without getting into any spoilers, this story exemplifies Anna and TYT being the reactionaries here. You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna go into spoilers. Spoilers! It turns out that the NYPD didn't tell the truth about what happened in that incident. And more body camera footage was released to the public today. Let's take a look at the body camera footage now that we have a full, unedited piece of footage instead of the 45 seconds that was edited by the NYPD for press release. So, walking down the street.
Other side, West 41 Street, West 41. No, West 4.
So, you know, just like cops walking up to random people, again, in Times Square, telling them to fuck off for no reason.
41, West 41.
So, if you notice, he basically, like, called one of the police officers ugly. You know, they're obviously not happy that the cops just walked up to them and were like, hey, fuck off, go away. And, like, he made a flippant comment about these, like, cops being ugly, which, unfortunately, in America is the, as Cenk Uygur from TYT has said so many times on the show, the worst crime you can be guilty of in America is disrespecting a police officer. Yeah, he literally said this cop looks like Ugly Betty. Which is an amazing burn, by the way. Amazing burn. 10 out of 10. And, but unfortunately, this is then what was guy, at which point, you know, his friends jump in to stop the cops from beating him up. So, this wasn't a case of, oh, these evil migrants just targeted the poor defenseless NYPD with a brutal gang beatdown. No, the NYPD initiated this confrontation at multiple points to escalate it. And then, like, his friends jumped in because they were beating this guy whose crime was saying, oh, this police officer looks like Ugly Betty.
Where are you? 185. 185. Go after those guys.
Like, I don't know. Like, Cenk and Anna have been in this business for a long time now. So I don't know what is causing them to take these police-released videos that are edited, that do not show the full context, and then say, oh, well, you know, obviously the migrants were at fault here because we're taking the NYPD at their word. The NYPD, famous for telling the truth about its policing activities. It's not like the NYPD is very, very famous for having, like, murdered police officers that, like, tried to improve the department and then lied about it. You know, like, I don't know. Maybe definitely don't Google Frank Serpico. My God. So anyway, spoiler alert. That's the full context. The migrant's real crime was calling a cop Ugly Betty. So with that in mind, here, let's get back to what points want to be made in this segment.
These are not people you need to provide cover for. These are people who are in the country claiming asylum. They don't have a right to be here. It is a privilege to be able to take advantage of our asylum program and be able to claim asylum, claim that you're here because of whatever reason. I don't know exactly which reason they gave for their asylum claim. And you get to have your case adjudicated in front of a judge. But if you're causing all sorts of—
Yeah, you get all of those things. Those are just nice things to have, not basic human rights.
Chaos. And if you're assaulting police officers, like the idea—
I'm sorry, but to me this just reads like someone saying having food is a human right, but you know what? It's actually a privilege. Like, if you're acting up in prison, you don't necessarily get food. That's a privilege for good prisoners. Like, no, sorry, that's not how that works. Even if you're the worst prisoner in the prison, you get food because it's a basic right. It's a basic right you have as a human being existing.
Idea that we're not even having a conversation about immediately deporting them is ridiculous. But then not only that, they get arrested and immediately released.
Again, also, no one's saying that deporting a migrant asylum seeker is ridiculous. If they are committing crimes, that's a totally valid reason to, like, deny their asylum claim and then deport them. That's how the system works. That's part of how it works. No one on the left that I have ever seen is like, yes, asylum seekers should be able to just walk around and murder whoever they want, and we'll never deport them. That's not a position. The straw man is actually, like, grotesque in this case.
Without bail, because of bail reform in New York. That's insane.
Yeah, you're right. They really should have just been kept in jail because they were unable to pay their bail. That would have been a much better situation. No, they have to prove that they're a threat to society, which they were unable to do in this case, likely because of the full body cam footage showing that the police just chose to assault them over like a verbal slight. That's probably why they weren't deemed like criminals to society, because they didn't just like maliciously out of nowhere ambush police officers and beat them.
Right? Am I crazy? I don't know. I feel like I've lost my—
The only part that you're crazy about in this segment, Anna, is one, framing basic human rights as privileges, and two, immediately siding with the NYPD based on their press release without any other additional information. Those are the two main missteps in this segment.
My mind at this point. I feel like I'm gonna get like an onslaught.
Also, the weird friendly fire for like bail reform, which has nothing to do with this case. Again, it's a very weird thing to keep talking about how like you think people should be locked up because they're poor, which is what bail does.
A lot of ridiculous harassment because I think
Or cash bail
people
does.
seeking asylum and taking up finite resources that could be given to another asylum seeker who isn't causing problems is ridiculous.
I do want to say, and this might be an uncharitable interpretation of what she's saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is the same rhetoric that xenophobic, like America First folks use. Except they go a step further, right? They go a half step further, which is that, you know, all of these resources being spent on asylum seekers, well, that's just resources we could be cutting out and giving directly to real American citizens. You know? The distinction she's made here is that, well, we shouldn't give any resources to any migrant we perceive as not good enough. We should only be giving asylum hearings to the good ones.
The Manhattan District Attorney's Office says that an investigation into the incident is ongoing.
Maybe that it was a little bit premature to make this segment.
We now have additional video surveillance that was not available at the time of arraignment and are continuing to speak to witnesses in order to determine the specific role of each defendant. And by the way, I want to be clear about something. If you are part of the left and you don't speak out against incidents like that, what it does is it allows for the right to paint a picture of what all asylum seekers are like, what all my
Okay, TYT gas theory must be true, right? Like, the gas leak must be happening because, like, Anna's been in the business long enough to know this, okay? It does not matter what the left does. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the left does. Conservatives will still make up whatever insane propaganda, whatever baseless claims they want. It doesn't change. You can have a model minority all you want. They will still make all of the same slanders, libels, accusations that they can. Right? This is the same rhetoric that people make in the trans community, by the way. When it comes to, like, passing versus non-passing. The idea that certain trans medicalists will argue that, well, if you don't look like a cis woman, you're actually making all trans people look bad. You know, it's a common argument used against non-binary people, for example, right? You're making all of us look bad because, well, you're existing in an inconvenient way. And, like, this is a similar thing, right? Conservatives will continue to lie about migrants. They lie about migrants right now. They talk about how illegal immigration like lowers wages for American workers, and that's just not true. Even the most conservative studies on this find that that's not true. Like, they'll say that, like, MS-13 is, like, this huge colossal problem, but the second Donald Trump gets into office, the problem has been solved because Donald Trump is in office now. He didn't actually even do anything. MS-13 just seemingly disappeared. You know, the idea that these undocumented immigrants are, like, bringing in truckloads of fentanyl when the biggest importers of fentanyl in the United States are hospitals. because that's a drug that's used in hospitals. Like, the lies don't have to have a basis in truth, because Republicans don't have a basis in truth. Their ideology is not based in truth. It's based in rhetoric. It's based in political ideals. And, like, again, they've both Cenk and Anna have been in this business for a long time. They know the NYPD lies constantly. We know we know that, like, police officers plant evidence all the time. There was a major news story just recently about how an entire police department in a border town in America was the center of a fentanyl smuggling operation. Like, the people doing all these things are Americans, and yet the people who take the blame for it are asylum seekers. You know? Let's watch the rest of this.
Migrants are like. And as we know, based on studies that have been conducted previously, there's no indication that immigrant communities have a higher rate of crime. Okay, anyone who claims that they do, it's just unfounded. There's no...
Wow. So it's really weird that immediately prior to you saying this, you talked about how, like, oh, well, you know, this is gonna prove all of the Republican allegations about asylum seekers. Even though there are studies that disprove that, meaning that those allegations are already not true. So what's the concern here? The job here is like unraveling the Republican propaganda. You can cover this story, but I feel like not enough evidence, not enough emphasis in this story was placed on the fact that it's incomplete, that it's based on one side of the story that has been edited and run through a PR team for the NYPD.
Evidence of that. But if the left starts providing cover for migrants who do commit crime and feel emboldened enough to literally assault police officers as they're trying to detain someone else, that sends a really bad message about what the left wants to represent. And it also allows for...
It also sends a pretty bad message if you, as a member of the left, immediately buy police propaganda and say that, and also say that, like, if you don't believe this story at first blush, you are doing a service to Republicans who are going to lie anyway, whether it's true or not.
In my opinion, the defamation of migrants who are here, who have legitimate asylum claims and should not be treated any differently from ordinary people, especially considering how vulnerable they are and how they're here either for safety or for opportunity.
I love the distinction that can't also be true of the boys in that video. Again, based off just the NYPD's video.
So this should not paint a picture of asylum seekers. But for those who cause these kinds of problems, there should be consequences. And they should be deported.
There are, and they are. Like, this is the part I don't get. This is the part I don't get. If you commit a crime while you're going through the asylum process, you still get arrested and charged, and you have to be found guilty of that crime first. And if it's severe enough, then you get deported. But it takes the conviction. It takes the conviction. I feel like I'm looking at a math problem. You know, like one of those like Facebook like memes that your mom or dad might post, and it's like, oh, what's the order of operations on this math equation? And it has like things in parentheses and like multiplication and addition and subtraction, etc. I feel like I'm watching someone answer that question incorrectly because they don't understand the order of operations. And it's weird to me because I know that she knows how this works. I don't know if like there's just been a massive like a forgetfulness thing going around. Like did they cross a ferry? Did they break a mirror? I don't know. Did they get cursed by one of the Fae folk to just lose memories?
Reported immediately. So at least 41 people have been arrested at the Roosevelt Hotel since May. The Roosevelt Hotel in New York City has been used for migrant shelters, and apparently they've had 41 people who have been arrested. Most of those cases involve domestic violence. An asylum seeker was accused of bashing an employee in the head with a no parking sign in June after the worker basically kicked him out of the building for being unruly. The worker ended up with a 6-inch gash on his head, and Mayor Eric Adams made an unannounced visit to the hotel within days to basically survey the situation. A 30-year-old migrant at the Manhattan hotel turned shelter was also arrested for alleged child endangerment. His alleged victim was an 11-year-old daughter, and that's according to police reports.
Yeah, we shouldn't paint the picture of these people, but anyway, look at how terrible all of these people are. Like, man, I'm getting a lot of mixed messages from this segment.
Reports on the matter, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office later declined to prosecute because prosecuting people is tough. You need to actually prove your case, and if it's not an open and shut case, they just drop it. So a spokesperson for the Manhattan DA's office says, after thorough investigation and review of the—
Man, it's almost like, I don't know. We could just like do like a weird, like a little Google. Like, for example, what happens if an asylum seeker commits a crime? Result number 1 from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. An asylee's, wow, I didn't know asylum seeker had a singular form. Asylees. Greatest concern is conviction of a particularly serious crime, including any aggravated felony. Such conviction may result in the termination of his or her asylum status, after which he or she can be removed for grounds of inadmissibility. So again, all of what she's talking about is addressed through the court system. If someone is convicted of a felony, they get their asylum status revoked. It just takes a conviction, not an arrest, a conviction.
the facts, the people declined to prosecute this matter. If a crime cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, it is our ethical duty not to charge it. It seems like they believe it's their ethical duty not to charge anyone with anything. So we'll see how it plays out for the people who were caught.
I'm sorry. Can we roll that back a little bit?
Prosecuting people is tough. You need to actually prove your case. And if it's not an open and shut case, they just drop it.
Yeah, it turns out you need to be able to convict the person. You need to have enough evidence to convict them. That's the case with all crime.
So a spokesperson for the Manhattan DA's office says, after thorough investigation and review of the facts, the people declined to prosecute this matter. If a crime cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, it is our ethical duty not to—
About which crime? You just read out a whole list of them.
Within days to basically survey the situation. A 30-year-old migrant at the Manhattan hotel turned shelter was also arrested for alleged child endangerment. His alleged victim was an 11-year-old daughter, and that's according to police reports on the matter. And the Manhattan District Attorney's Office later declined to prosecute.
Okay, later declined to prosecute that case. Why? Like, again, you don't go into the details of that case. You just say that they declined to prosecute, and kind of make a hand wavy gesture here towards the fact that, like, oh, well, they declined to prosecute because it'd be too hard. It would take too many resources on their part. But they're also required to be able to prove their case. If they didn't have the evidence to prove it, then it doesn't matter whether they're an asylum seeker or not. Like, they still wouldn't be convicted because there's not evidence.
Because prosecuting people is tough. You need to actually prove your case.
Yeah.
And if it's not an open and shut case, they just drop it. So spokesperson.
Also, if these cases are about domestic violence, they fall into a similar category and into a similar problem that a lot of other non-asylum seeker cases fall into when it comes to domestic violence, which is people choosing not to prosecute. People, initially calling the cops and then changing their minds that they don't want to press charges against the person who beat them. Like, this is a thing that happens all the time outside of these circumstances. And that's just a problem with the particular types of crimes you're talking about.
For the Manhattan DA's office says, after thorough investigation and review of the facts, the people declined to prosecute this matter. If a crime cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, it is our ethical duty not to charge it. It seems like they believe it's their ethical duty not to charge anyone with anything.
Citation needed.
So we'll see how it plays out for the people who were caught in that surveillance footage beating the crap out of those cops. But anyone who thinks like, oh, who cares? We don't like cops, so let them do whatever they want. You're ridiculous, okay? You're ridiculous. Not all of us have the resources, as Cori Bush did, to hire private security and feel safe. Ordinary citizens have their tax money sent.
Again, this is made even more rich by the fact that the longer video that has since come out from the NYPD shows that the people who were being harassed in this video were the migrants. They were being harassed by the cops and then assaulted by the cops. The people who were making them not safe in that situation were the cops.
Sent to local police departments for protection to keep the community safe. So if you have a situation in which police are getting the message that they can be assaulted like that, and then right after their book, they're just released without bail, I don't know, I feel like it's gonna harm
because they're released because they need, like, they are trusted by the court system to make it to their court date, which the overwhelming majority of them do. And if they don't go to their court date, then it gets escalated to like a felony. And if they commit another crime, like that, obviously, then they get sent to jail to be held until their court dates. My God. The only thing cashless bail does is prevent people from being held in jail because they're poor.
Recruitment efforts in a situation where we already have a shortage of police officers. So when you call the cops because you need them and they're unable to come because there is that shortage, don't complain about it if you provided cover for the kind of behavior we saw in that surveillance footage.
This is insane. This is insane. Oh yeah, if you think that cops assaulting immigrants, man, this is deeply disappointing, man.
But aside from that, if these guys are comfortable enough to openly, publicly, in broad daylight beat the crap out of police officers, what do you think they're willing to do to ordinary people? We already know one of them had no problem beating up or assaulting retail workers. So what kind of other damage are they going to do to other members of that community? No, we got to speak out against this stuff, and we have to speak out against it loudly. We have to be clear that they're not representative of immigrants and migrants, but we also have to be clear that we on the left denounce and condemn this kind of behavior and want consequences for it. And if you don't,
I just have to say, I want to make it clear. I'm gonna let her finish.
Just think about what kind of message that sends to the general public about what the priorities and actual values of the left happen to be.
I'm just gonna say something real quick, okay? I do. I agree. We do have to speak loudly out against this stuff. We do have to speak out against it. We have to be clear that when lefties come out and they say reactionary garbage like this, based on a fragment of a story that is only propagated and backed up by the NYPD, we have to hold them accountable. When it comes out later that they were wrong, that they were completely and utterly wrong about the content of the story they covered, about the angle they chose to cover the story from, about the substantiation they gave to the story, and like the awfulness of the coverage itself. Like, I'm genuinely curious, and I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm genuinely curious to see if Anna is going to at all issue a retraction, a correction, any kind of statement on this. Because it's a really, really bad look to instantly cover the PR, the press release from the NYPD, and then just go silent when it turns out, oh, oops, you covered it before the full video came out. Deeply disappointing, clownish, and I'm frankly just astonished at this lack of analysis